Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back at Future Roundnet Podcast, Navigating the Courts. I'm your host, Jakub Popelhar, and today we will indeed be navigating the courts, especially the court of AI, because my guest is no one else than Austin from Seattle, the founder of Roundnet AI. Yes, you heard it right. Roundnet AI is an app that you can use and download on your smartphone, which edits the game automatically for you. So you don't have to watch or edit your videos for 20 minutes. It literally just takes a couple of seconds, and then you have all the clips that you want where there was some action. But how does it work was my question, and therefore I contacted Austin. He was so nice to take some of his time and explain to me yeah, you can select a 5-year-old, I don't want to curse, a 5-year-old, how does computer learning work, and all the fun stuff that I had absolutely no idea about. Moreover, Austin has been also monitoring the development of the game of Roundnet in terms of players and tournaments played, and he presented me some amazing graphs and graphics which really blew my mind. So if you're interested just in that, how many players play each year Roundnet, then just look in the timestamps and go there. You don't need to listen to the entire conversation. Of course, I'll be super stoked if you do, but let us know in comments, what did you like? Are you using Roundnet AI? Because if you want to start using Roundnet AI, just go into the description of the episode and there's a link so you can go and try it out for yourself. I think that's the best way. Anyway, it doesn't cost you anything. So without further ado, Austin, Roundnet AI, attaque! Before we get into the episode, just make sure you hit the subscribe button and then you'll be notified about all the amazing news that we have for you. So, bam, subscribe and enjoy. Future Roundnet. Hi Austin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, thank you for taking the time. We have another cross-Atlantic conversation here. You are on what time right now?
I'm on Pacific time, so it's about 11 p.m. for me right now. Yeah.
And here 8 a.m. in Vienna, Austria, which is super awesome. And we have so many things to talk about, but especially about the Roundnet AI. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. This is the reason why we are talking, because I'm very excited when people try to push the sport forward and create something new. And with Roundnet AI, I've recently discovered it and tried it out. I was like, wow, okay, I need to talk to this person. This is just so good, so future-like thinking. So first and foremost, as I was preparing in this interview, I've read that you started this project during COVID, right? So you got your plans canceled. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit? How did you start?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, yeah, this started during COVID. I was in school and undergraduate studies and had spring break plans. They got canceled like everyone else's did at the time. And instead of, just sitting around doing nothing, I was like, oh, let's make use of this time. And so I found a little video online of just it was a drone view of people playing in the sand and on YouTube. And I figured, I was like, oh, let's start and see if we can, actually track the ball and track the net and stuff from that drone view of a Roundnet game. And so I spent, a couple days working on stuff. I had some previous computer vision experience just from a previous internship that I had done. So I was able to kind of leverage that a little bit. And, kind of basically at the end of that whole week that I had a working prototype just showing the ball being tracked across the play field. And, it was kind of just like, oh, well, that's cool. And that was kind of the very beginning of it, I guess I'll say, which is, I think, back in March of 2020. And I can kind of just progress forward too, if you want me to just kind of continue and talk about how that, kind of progressed from there if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. In a minute, because I'm already seeing hearing a lot of things that I have so many questions about tracking. But before we get into technical details and lose 95% of the listeners and viewers, I would like to actually, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, because you said undergraduate study, where you're based, maybe currently, so everyone now knows or figured out by now that you're based in the US.
Yep, I'm based in the
So
US.
let's start with that.
Yeah, I'm based in the US in Seattle, Washington, which is in kind of
Mm.
the northwest corner of the US. If you're, I guess, excluding Alaska. But so, yeah, so I've born and raised in Seattle and went to the University of Washington, which is also in Seattle. And I had an undergraduate degree, or I studied informatics, which is kind of a mix between computer science and statistics. So I had, the technical knowledge for all the computer science stuff, and then also kind of learn more about data and everything around there. And so it was kind of I think played my first game of Roundnet like back, I think, as a freshman, or first year in college, and I fell in love with it just like everyone else did. And it was not until I think my sophomore or maybe junior year or second or third year that I found out that our school had a club to play Spikeball or Roundnet. So I, decided to join and just kind of met people and continued playing. Played in my first tournament, I think, back in 2021 or so, and that's kind of where I was like, let's see if. And I think by that point, obviously, I had done the initial basis for the Roundnet AI stuff, but started to dabble into the competitive scene a little bit more, and yeah, that's kind of my background and how I got into the sport and that type of stuff. Yeah.
When you said you started playing, or first time you played Roundnet in your freshman year of college, can you walk us through that experience? Because in Europe, for example, a lot of people, especially from Germany, got to know Roundnet at the very specific camp in France, where guys from Cologne brought it 2015-16, and that has been kind of the story. But because we have mostly European listeners, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean the first time playing? You're just walking around the park and then see people bouncing this ball off the net, or how was it?
Yeah, I was actually, I think my first time playing was I was in the recruitment process for a fraternity on campus. And so
Mm-hmm.
there was obviously a bunch of upperclassmen that were playing already. And the whole event was trying to get to know people. And so one of the things they had was a spikeball net. And so they asked all of the people that they were recruiting, I being one of them, if I wanted to join. And so, yeah, so it was kind of just like people that played it, brought it with them and kind of just got passed down.
Mm-hmm. So social aspect, so to say, is an icebreaker. Okay, let's
Right.
play around it as an
Exactly.
icebreaker.
Exactly.
But do you remember how did your first game go, or first games? Because from my experience, it's quite difficult to start playing just right off the
Yeah.
bat.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Looking back on it, it's hard to say, but I definitely think that I felt like I felt like I was doing pretty good when I first joined. I have pretty good hand-eye coordination just from the other sports that I play. I played a lot of soccer or football growing up, and back, I think, my sophomore year of high school, so second year of high school, I started playing water polo, which is,
Oh,
and I'm a goalie. I was a goalie for both sports, and so that's, the hand-eye coordination is essential for those sports, and so I think that was kind of what helped me a little bit. But yeah, from what I remember, I thought I was doing pretty good. But we probably weren't that experienced at the time when we were playing.
when you start anything new, then you may have the feeling I'm so good, and then you get a reality check a little bit later on, which
Yep.
is also a great thing for the ego. Hurts a little
Yeah.
bit, but
Yeah.
then as I can already see, then you're one of the people that it pushes you. Okay, there, so I can improve. This is where I can go to.
Mm-hmm.
Which says actually water polo. I used to play handball, so the European handball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is we say the most American sport the Americans don't know about. And now the Olympics are starting, so if you have a chance, and you'll
Yeah,
see
I'll
France
watch it.
or Denmark, the handball teams is just crazy. It's such a great sport, but in water polo, so extremely difficult. I used to train with those guys, water polo, when I was preparing for my entrance exams to become a PE teacher, because we had
Mm-hmm.
a swim, we had to swim 100 meters on time to get some points. And I was just trying to survive in the pool during water polo, and they do all the tricks, all the shots, right? So
Yeah.
respect. So that is a very difficult sport. So you had there all the prerequisites to become
Mm-hmm.
a great rounded player.
Yeah, and I didn't even know it. So yeah.
Just stumbled upon it. For
Mm-hmm.
me, which is startling is that you already did the rounded AI. I'll probably say open AI a couple of times just out of habit before you even played your first tournament, which is
Yeah.
for me very difficult to comprehend. But let's go through the rabbit hole of you playing competitive, because on your website it says made by competitive round athletes for competitive round athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So at which point did you start taking it seriously as a sport?
Yeah. So I think it was, I think it must have been probably kind of around that 2021 period when I wanted to play in my first tournament that I really started, actually trying to, practice serves, like setting my net up and like actually just practicing as much as possible. Uh, Luckily, like there was some guys that were in our kind of club that were already premier and stuff, and so they, I was able to practice with them a whole bunch, and so I was able to kind of learn a lot from them. And so kind of it all just started with just kind of them kind of taking me under their wing and kind of just starting out that way. Now I will say since then, like I've devoted so much more time to the app that the amount of time that I actually get to play Roundnet is very diminished. So I won't say that I'm like as competitive as some of the higher premier players and everything, but I still really enjoy it, and it's one of those things where I'm okay with sacrificing that because this is still an amazing community, and I love to build the sport.
Are you premier?
I'm not, no. So I don't even have that credentials really. It's just like both of the people that were on my club that I still regularly talk to. There's some feedback and stuff that I get from them about the app, and we've signed a couple of premier teams that are sponsored by us, and so we've gotten feedback from the app from them and everything. So it's kind of just something that's we're in as close to the community as we can be without, I guess, me being actually in the premier status. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most important thing to be premier also for the coaches. I mean, it could be beneficial to play at a higher level. But I think, for example, as a coach or someone who wants to be part of the community, just need to understand it. And some people, maybe pro players, still don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get it after one tournament, what the community is about, how people are thinking and what the sport needs.
Yeah.
Right. So I would not say it as a disqualifier, because especially me knowing the geography of the US, Seattle is pretty far away from the Roundnet hubs, and you have to fly everywhere, right? And the flights are not the cheapest, let's put it that way, because everything is so far. I mean, that's why I was wondering about the community in Seattle, because I know in California they have some people, but I did 2 great road trips in the US, and we were always surprised that they were so happy to have us when we came, like 3 of us, Miara and Dominic, because then they could actually play a premier game and only need 1 player. They were like, oh, we almost never meet 4 people. Like on a high level, I was like, what? I thought US was the hub, everyone's playing.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we're in Dallas, like, no, we play maybe once a month or once in 3 weeks. And then we got a group of 12 players together once in Dallas with Logan Cornelius, who is the founder of Roundnet Worldwide, something that I think we're going to explore a little bit later as well. And they were like, oh, this is the best pickup we had in months. And I was like, okay, I'm so happy for this. That was great. So it's not as easy to get premier, because the opportunity compared to us in Europe, when we have tournaments every week and you can just take a train for 2 hours and play, it is very different.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm very envious of for the European side of things, is the ability. Like you guys have the whole club system and everything, and it just feels like a much easier network to go through and play versus as you said, the flying from state to state is not cheap. It's doable, but it's just not cheap. And so yeah.
And it's not only that. I mean, since I had this experience personally, then you have to take sometimes an Uber, or a lot of times the Uber if no one picks you up from the airport, not even to the venue, but to someone's place if you're lucky, or to an Airbnb. It's all money. In Europe, we have the buses, the trains, also from the airport, and we're set. We sleep at each other's places because people are everywhere. And really, it can be very low cost. I had people who were complaining that they spent 40 euros on a tournament weekend, and that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? Traveling to a different city, whereas in the US, for 40 euros, you're not even get from the airport to where you need to go. One way.
Yeah.
I understand that. Okay, so maybe let's return now to the timeline. Your next blog post was in November 2021, after you've done some initial testing and developed the app. But before we do the ball tracking, everything that I know from tracking is, I mean, obviously I learned it from CapCut, that you have to do it manually. but I bought a drone, 2018 the first time, and I was super excited, and for me it felt like magic that the drone could follow me, right? I was like, okay, this is so great. My drone was not huge, but it's big. And I was like, okay, this is so smart, and it's not gonna crash, and it tracks me. Is this some way that the app is working as well, like at the back end, that is trying to track the ball only, or what is it tracking actually?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'll try and answer this question without going into too much technical details to hopefully not bore everyone who's listening. But yeah, so
If you do, no worries. I'll just try to translate into my language or into English.
right.
So just go for it.
Okay. So there's a couple different approaches in general that you have for when it comes to tracking objects in an image or a video. There's kind of more conventional approaches, which, might involve like picking a color in a video, and then like basically you can isolate that color, and then you can track that same color between frames of a video. So think of a spike ball, or a round net ball being yellow in most instances, or whatever video you're looking at, if it's yellow, you can if the video doesn't have, if like the one that I was first working with was all on sand. So there's a pretty high contrast between the yellow and the tan of the sand. And so you can actually just use that yellow to track where that is and isolate that to find exactly where the ball is. That's one approach that uses kind of a more conventional method. Obviously, you can imagine that that's like not robust and strong, because it's, if there is yellow in that instance anywhere else in the video, then it might get a false track somewhere else. So what I kind of learned from that initial video is you really needed to build some custom models. And when I say custom models, I'm kind of referring to more of the like modern approach for computer vision, which is, it's basically just doing a bunch of training and saying like, okay, this is a ball, this is a ball, this is a ball, across many different images and videos. And then after you have a large enough data set of those kind of different instances of a ball being in different spots, you can train it, and it'll learn what a ball looks like and what a net looks like and all that type of stuff. And so all of our kind of more latest stuff has been around using that type of technology opposed to the more kind of modern or conventional approaches. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, so basically you feed the model a lot of data, a lot of reps, right? Like, let's say if I'm coach and you did something right, then I'm going to praise you. I'll take a video and then, okay, this is where we want to go. And then I'll film a lot of different hits. And then the person learning will be like, okay, this is what I did. This is what I did wrong. This was great. And then you're doing it with machines, right? So you're teaching the model to recognize, okay, this is the ball. That's what we want. Okay. I think it's pretty understandable.
Yeah. 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 So I obviously there's a couple different like objectives in computer vision, I guess is maybe a way to put it. So like you could do object tracking, you could do what's called object classification. So if you're looking at an image of a dog versus a cat, can you classify which one is which? In this case, one model that we developed was like, can you identify when a ball is on a net? So you can classify a net as having a hit on it or not, as an example. And so there's also like a pose. So you could like a pose model where you could get the points for a person. You can get the forehead, the chin, the shoulders, the chest, the knees, and everything. You can get those points, and you can see exactly where a person is in an image. And there are a couple other ones, but those are kind of the main ones that we use, and we'll probably talk about more during this. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So first of all, it was okay. You need to go and track the ball because that is moving. And then when the rally happens, that means when the ball hits the net, and you're tracking that. But now, did you set yourself like to go on a bigger scale, a vision? Okay, at some point you want the app to be able to do this, and now it's going to take some time, or also progress in technology to be able to get there. So what was your thought process after maybe the week when you noticed, okay, this is actually a lot of fun and I can contribute greatly to the sport because you're the pioneer. This has never been done before in a way. So what was your big goal, or what is your big goal with Roundnet AI?
Yeah, good question. My initial big goal was, I knew that the there was the Roundnet Stats app that existed where you could like type in, this hit happened, and then it would give you your player ratings or your ranked player, all the defensive and offensive player ratings and everything. And my first overarching goal was I wanted to automate that process. I wanted to basically make it so I could just feed in the video and it would give me all of the player rankings and everything without having to touch anything. So that was like my first big goal. And I think it took me basically from later in 2021 to maybe like a year or year and a half later to the point where I actually got like that whole process done where it could actually generate those player rankings. Now, the caveat is Roundnet AI currently doesn't do any of that because after I kind of got through that whole process, there was so many unique like circumstances that it would have to like it was really prone to errors essentially is what I'm trying to say. And so it just wasn't something that it wasn't going to be reliable enough for people in a consumer setting to want to use it in order for it to for that to be something that we wanted to put into an app. That was the initial idea, and eventually kind of migrated, and I can talk about how that migration happened. But that was kind of the initial idea, and it's still something that I would love to focus on if things changed and technology got a little bit better, and I got better at developing and everything, and could take another crack at trying to get that to happen. But yeah, with the time, it was just like it worked, but it was just not as reliable as it needed to be.
I see, because me coming from established sports, they have it in soccer, they have it in handball, that immediately now it's almost everything's automatic. I remember my father, who was a national coach for the Slovak national team. So they wouldn't have a team of analysts or data, right? He would tell me like, this is so expensive, this program, but we really want it because then I can click the goals. I can see where she or he like shot from, right? Which is now automatic in the, for example, in the NBA, where they have cameras in their training facilities, which are scanning the angle of the shots and doing all this stuff. So that was something that you were trying to do for Roundnet, right? So to automate, so we can get the stats, because there's a huge importance in stats and analytics that a lot of people don't even realize, I would say, unless you were really deep in some professional sport or work with people who are professionals in this sense. So after a year and a half, you had to scratch that because you were like, okay, that's not going to happen. It's prone to errors. I don't want to say how did it make you feel, because I can very much imagine. So when you say year and a half, how often, and also in the past and also right now, how many hours a week do you invest in Roundnet AI?
Yeah. So I think that year and a half I spent, I think, close to 1,000 hours developing like hands-on keyboard typing code to get it to that point. And it was kind of funny because when I finally like there was several major blockers that I got in that whole process that took me like months to figure out how to solve one specific problem or whatever. But what at the very end of it, when it all kind of finished, it was just like there's the four numbers, like there's each player's rating, and it's like that's the culmination. Those four numbers, the culmination of a year and a half's worth of work, which was good to finally see that it was done. And it was just it kind of weight lifted off my shoulders because it was I was spending a lot of time on it, essentially just like because I have a full-time job outside of everything that I do for Roundnet AI. So really it's been just any free time that I have after my job is over. So usually from like 6 p.m. to call it 9 p.m. or so, I have roughly 3 or 4 hours in the rest of my day that I'm able to devote to Roundnet AI and whatever my other personal pursuits are. And so for that first year and a half, it was like basically all my time spent after work on during the days was all on that. And obviously the weekends and stuff too, I would develop for it too. And now more recently, it's also kind of similar where it's maybe dialed back a little bit, where I'll maybe spend an hour or two a day on stuff right now, where that's like marketing stuff, or we've got a couple interns, or responding to people on Instagram, or actually building new features for it. All of that stuff is so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Wow, 1,000 hours. It's a lot. They say you need 10,000 hours for excellence. Right? So 1/10 with Roundnet AI alone.
Yeah.
Just with Roundnet AI alone, and not to mention your job, internship and stuff. Oh, huge respect. And you mentioned that now you have interns. So how big is the team actually?
Yeah, so the team right now is 4 people. So it's me, my co-founder, and my co-founder focuses mainly on the actual app development, whereas I focus on the AI development and the backend systems supporting the app. So he's one of my good friends. I went to college with him, and that's how I met him. And he mainly focuses on just the making the actual app itself, and then I'm kind of doing a lot of the other stuff. And then the 2 interns that we have, one is a marketing intern that has been with us for the past couple months, and he's been doing a great job. Both of them have been doing a really great job, and he focuses on the marketing stuff, and he's been pumping out a bunch of stuff for us, which has been great. And then the other one is a computer science intern, and he's helping me with a new feature, which I can talk about a little bit here, which is the ability to help people train their serves. So that's something that I can talk to more, but that's kind of the next big step for Roundnet AI. If we want to go into that right now, we can, or if we wanted to,
Let's just go.
Sure.
Let's just go right into that, because now people are waking up like, okay, I can train serves. Okay, I can have someone help me with that.
Yeah.
And then we may return to the team, because I'm also curious about it. But let's hit the serves.
Sure. Yeah. So, obviously serving is a big part of Roundnet. Whether people, it's kind of controversial maybe to some that, maybe it's too much of the sport or whatever, but regardless, it's a big portion of the sport. And so we kind of acknowledge that. And right now, the app is mainly tailored for content creators. And so people who are trying to make highlights or whatever. And so we really acknowledge that like we're kind of missing a big portion of the user base with the app. And so we wanted to try and get something that was more broadly appealed to more people. And so obviously serving is one spot that we could really help with. So the idea for the feature is that you'll be able to set your camera on a tripod on the other side of the net, and you basically are serving to the camera. So you just do whatever you're normally doing for serves, put it up against a wall or whatever and have the camera in between, or whatever everyone does. You just need to serve to the camera, and then the app, once it's uploaded and analyzed and everything, it'll tell you your percentage for how you are at left versus right hand serves. It'll try and differentiate the types of serves you do, so cut versus reverse cut, or left reverse, right reverse, whatever you want to try and get there. And then it'll also tell you where on the net that you hit. And so it'll show you, here's the percentage that you have in the like front pocket that you can that are your really top prime serves versus the stuff that's maybe back farther and going up higher. And there's some stretch goals that we have with having to do with how high did the serve go, and some other stats around that, but that's still kind of up in the air. Yeah, for right now, it's really just to help people better understand, maybe where their weaknesses are for serving, and then hopefully, with that they can go through and adjust and serve more to meet that whatever their goals are.
When does this feature roll out, or what is the timeline?
Yeah. We don't have a timeline on it quite yet. I would like to think that by the end of this year, so maybe not for this season, but for next season, it'll be around. I'm working on it as we speak. Like I was working on it earlier today. Me and my intern have been working on it for the past couple of months and getting a lot of the models trained and everything to get that what's necessary. Some people might have seen a reel or two that we put on Instagram asking for content for people so that we can, go through and actually create this. It was great feedback. So I think, that's my goal by the end of this year is to have that released to everyone.
We can then have a follow-up chat, not only to promote it, but also to try it, because I see so much value in it. Because I remember from my serving days that I would say that I had pretty good expertise when it comes to sports statistics. But then when you're just trying to focus on, let's say, on your hand contact, you're not really paying attention, okay, where I'm hitting the ball on the net all the time. How many serves did I do? Because then, okay, did I do 10, 12, 15? And you play games with yourself, okay, I do 10 serves now. I'm focusing, so I hit 7 out of 10. But if that everything could be automated, and then also, especially from the coach's perspective, if I can see as a player, okay, I just keep hitting the back pocket, I just don't know what to do, then I can reach out to a coach if I don't have a club, or if I don't have experts in my area, also online, and then ask, okay, this is my issue, these are my stats, what can I improve? What do you say? And then I can watch the video and say, okay, maybe you need to hit the ball a little bit lower, right? If you're hitting back pocket all the time. Okay, like look at a contact, and then once we have the camera, okay, look, you're contacting the ball all the time here, try here as an example, or play with it. Maybe go lower, get on your knees again, and just try to hit and focus really not about making the serve, but where the ball lands on the net. And then you can also build from there. This would be an amazing tool and a lot of help. It would definitely not help the serve ball issue that we have in the game, even though I don't think it's a serve ball issue as much. And I talked to many very smart people and very experienced people in Roundnet. It's usually the hitting that is the issue with the rallies, because the hitting and setting just got way too good. And unless you serve amazingly and you generate a bad touch, it's very difficult to play defense, especially now since for the 3 years the rules have not changed. So I really do hope for you guys that the serving rules won't change towards the end of the year. But that is awesome, because I love the way that the way you think, because you said, okay, we are here for the content creators. And I talked to some of them and I got some great feedback, because I want to gather as much intelligence, so to say, information before we talk as possible, because it saves time. Ultimately, the idea, now we may come to the main goal that you had, that you want to talk about, is to save time for content creators to put more content out there, right? So is this how it developed from being the stats, everything's automatic, to now, okay, let's save people's time?
Yeah. So, I do have to give some credit to that Roundnet podcast a little bit, because the first episode, I think that I don't know if you've listened to their stuff at all.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
last season and stuff, but they had one Shark Tank episode, I think, and I think that was the first episode that I happened to watch of them, where they just kind of pitched ideas to each other and said, like, what would you think about this idea for the Roundnet community, or this idea, or whatever, and they kind of rated them and stuff. And one of the ones that got tossed around during that call that podcast was something that would eliminate dead time. I think it was something like that. It would take your whole video and then eliminate all the dead time from the video. And I kind of thought to myself, at this point, I was like already done with all the stats based approaches and everything. And I was like, like I've already got basically all of that technology, like from the stuff that I've been developing over the year and a half. And so I basically was like, well, if that's what they're saying and they're like way in tune and in depth into the community and everything, like, why don't I just give it a shot? And so I kind of slimmed everything down, basically took out a lot of the portions that weren't relevant to that, and then put a little beta together with some, I think 20 or 30 people that I could gather together. And I said, try out the beta version of Roundnet AI, where it would just basically splice all the rallies from the video, so you could go through and find all of them. And it was basically just enough of a receptive, feedback that we basically said, okay, let's take this, simple idea, slim down from what it really was, slim down, and then make that into the core functionality for the first version of the app. So that's kind of how it actually developed, which is kind of an interesting, origin story, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, you can give them more credit, not the little credit, because I believe, and they would be very happy, I think Scott Mike gave in at the time, that not only that someone's listening, but also that someone's actually taking action from what they're talking about, because you never know who you're going to reach. There's also one of the reasons we're doing this right now, where I started this podcast, not only to showcase the elite players and their tactics and mindsets that players can learn from, but also the so-called, I call them backstage stars, people behind the curtains like yourself, Ben Dantowitz, Fred Eskens, and I'm definitely not mentioning all of them, right, in Germany team. So there's so many of them, and people have no idea and take things for granted. That since I've been on both sides, I've been a pro player, but I also organize a lot of things with starting the club, organizing Mallorca Fresh. I know you're not getting paid very well, if at all, for all this work you do in the background. So it's actually nice if someone acknowledges your work, right? So also for you, feel free to name drop all the time, because I do think people appreciate it, even if it's a slight mention, right? Because also those 20, 30 volunteers, I mean, you don't have to say all of them, because obviously forget probably all of them, but they know who they are. Things like they contribute to the overall development of the sport which is hopefully what people who are listening is one of the main goals that we have.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've listened to the idea, you stripped down the process, and now you were able to capture rallies or like to edit out the dead time.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, well, I will say that the first iteration of the app that we posted originally didn't have the ability to take out dead time, but it did have the ability to basically find the start points of all the rallies. So it would tell you like this rally started here, this rally started here, but it wouldn't necessarily tell you where it ended. And so it was, I think, basically 6 months in once the app was published or 6 months or so, that I was able to redesign it more so in a way that it would only take the stuff that was relevant and then it would eliminate all the dead time. So that was something that came slightly later after we had released the full version of the app, but it was, and I can talk a little bit about like what's going on in the background there to actually make that happen. But yeah, feel free to ask whatever part about that process.
So what process are we talking about? I'm not sure. The process, the technical background that needed to be done to find the rallies so that it can be analyzed automatically?
Yeah, because maybe I'll slightly go into it. So that the first version just kind of had like basically it was doing the ball tracking and it was doing the net. It was basically tracking the nets and the balls and everything, and it would find basically when the point at which like there's 4 people in the video and all of them were stationary, because that's usually when people are saying the score and right starting the point. And so I was able to use essentially that criteria to find the start points for rallies. And obviously that's not 100% accurate or consistent all the time, but it was pretty good, and it managed to, I think, get somewhere around like 85% accurate or something like that, which was good enough for where we needed it to be. And, obviously people kept telling us, and the feedback we got was, we need to remove the dead time for this to be something I'd want to use or whatever it is. And so at that point, I went back to the drawing board a little bit and said, okay, what's a better approach for this? And so now the method we use now is kind of more of it uses like an image classification model. So it basically looks at a certain image for a video and it says, is this an active frame or is this an inactive frame? And so it basically will just say like, if people are actively playing, classify it as an active frame. If it's something that people aren't playing, then classify it as a non-active frame. And then you can just kind of group those together and you just say, okay, this rally happened here because there's a bunch of groupings of active frames. There's one that happened over here, another grouping of active frames, and so on. And so that's kind of how that's changed and progressed.
And how does it work when, for example, you have obviously 4 people at the net, but then you lose the ball, one person needs to go and get the ball, so he runs out of the picture, and one of the other people maybe is walking a little bit and they're just standing still. Is that an active frame? Because I imagine that could be also very difficult, because that happens quite a lot.
Right. Yeah, I spent probably close to 100 hours maybe going through Roundnet videos and just classifying different frames as active versus non-active. I think I'm probably the person that's watched the most amount of pure Roundnet videos than anyone else, I think, in the world, just based on how many videos I've had to go through to make these models and everything.
Guys, let us know in the comments if you watch more videos in Austin.
Yeah, it might be hard, but yeah, let me know if you've gotten more than 100 hours. It's more than that, but that was for that one project or part of it. But yeah, so it just takes a lot of time, and once you've got a bank of it, because obviously all of those instances where someone might be running out of the frame, but there's not an actual game happening, I'd classify those as non-active. Only when there's active gameplay is when I'd classify them as an active frame. So yeah, it takes a lot of just manual time of going through and clicking, yes, no, all the way back and forth until you get enough of a data set where you can train it and it gets high enough accuracy.
I'm thinking if I could have been that person, I think now overall, not anymore, but in 2019, 2021, because when you said COVID hit, plans get canceled, my plans actually got canceled as well. It was by 48 hours that I couldn't fly to California to stay with Preston, Ryder, Jared, with 2 of my friends for like 3-4 weeks. I mean, had we gone there, sometimes I entertained the thought in the parallel universe I would have returned after 3 months of quarantine with Preston Ryder in 2020, the best European player by far, or all three of us,
Mm-hmm.
but it was not meant to be. And then I started also practicing Roundnet myself. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, how could you be so confident back then? I mean, I'm still confident, but in other things as well. I was like, yeah, I spend around 8 hours every day or 10 doing Roundnet. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
practice 3 times a week. Then I would analyze the videos. I would watch all the pickups that the Americans posted because no one was posting anything in Europe. I would think about it. I would develop coaching plans. I was literally more than a full-time job, and I did for 3 to 4 months because there was nothing else to do, so to say. I just graduated college. I was ready to go and take on the world, and
Mm-hmm.
then it shut down. And then obviously with doing all the reps, all the hits, okay, I think I have a pretty good idea about the game now. I just need to go out there and play. So I totally feel you because I was so happy to have a MacBook back then because on my old Windows computer it would not be possible to watch so much footage.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, you go faster. And then when I heard about Roundnet AI, I was like, wow, this could save me so much time. Because if I have one game that is 20 minutes, then it took me, and I was doing also stats, of course, with the Max Model app, the Roundnet stats. I talked to Logan, Roundnet stats worldwide. And I was like, 20 minutes took me, I don't know, 10 minutes, 8 minutes to go through. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just to get the footage. Then I
Yeah.
would look in the playing situations. But now, as you also say on your website, and some of the content creators, they also acknowledge this, said, yeah, that's the way it is, that you are basically saving people's time. This is when we come also to subscription or financing a little bit, because I see, and I used to have this mindset a couple of years ago as well, that, oh, why should I pay money to someone when I can do it myself? But then you don't realize, okay, it takes you 3 hours. And if you paid someone €5, it may just take you 1 hour. So you save 2 hours time for €5. Is your hour worth €5 as an example, or $5?
Yeah.
And with this mindset, I started to get much more into automation and all the other things that, okay, where else can I save time?
Yep.
Right. So is this also one of your marketing? My question is, marketing strategies are trying to make people more aware that, guys, you can really save up time. So then you can go and grind serving or actually practice.
Right. Yeah, totally. I think, we could probably do a better job at that too. I'm not a marketing guy. I'm more of a developer. So, I struggle with some of the marketing sometimes, but I totally agree. At the end of the day, like, time is the one resource that is limited for everyone, right? So that if you can save that, then you're in good hands. But, I remember also going through those videos when I wanted to take stats on stuff. And then sometimes to get through a stat block for one game, it took me longer than the duration of the video because you have to watch it and then you
Oh,
have to,
yes.
pause it and then go, oh wait, I missed something. Let me go back 5 seconds. And then, there's all these, extra criteria and everything that you have to go through. And I was like, this is a terrible process. And I was like, I knew that so many people recorded their games just from having been at a couple tournaments and stuff that I was like, man, is everyone going through this process of like just doing all of this and keeping stats and just wasting all this time? And I was like, there's got to be the better way. So that's kind of where that kind of came from. But I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I understand, because, for example, what I then train myself to do is not watch the game, but just take the stats. That's how I was
Right.
able to trim down time. But then I would have to remind myself constantly because there was a great rally or something that I
Mm-hmm.
noticed from the coaching perspective or improvement perspective. Like, okay, Jakob, let's not get into that because you are now losing track of the stats. And
Yeah.
then I would have to go back somehow, then look for it. Oh my God, it was very excruciating at points. And I remember after playing Roundnet for 2-3 years, and I would talk to people about stats. They were like, "What stats? There's an app?" I was like, "Yeah, you can do it." I mean, yeah, okay, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because in terms of improvement, I remember my thought process is when I played first against the guys from Cologne in 2019, and we got beaten badly because they've been playing for 3 years. So okay, I'm doing stats, and I figured out game till 15, I may have 5 to 7 hits on average, right? And then, okay, those guys have been playing for 2 years more, practicing twice a week. So how many hits do I actually need to do to catch up with them with the number of reps? And I just did
Right.
the math. I was like, okay, so half here and I'm on their level. Easy
Mm-hmm.
game. Because now, because especially thanks to how to Roundnet, we knew more or less how the technique was. Then Preston was in Europe, showed us some things. I said, okay, so it's actually pretty straightforward for me. The same with ball control, because you know it probably better than I do. How many times does one person touch the ball during a pickup game, especially the beginners? That's why I asked you at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I had a training session. I led a training session yesterday. And again, I told the beginner intermediate, okay, we're just doing some ball control drills. In first 3 minutes, they got more touches than they would get in 2 weeks of playing pickup twice or 3 times a week. Because what do? You just go and get the balls. You don't really practice when you are playing with 4 friends who are not so good, who are not so experienced.
Right.
But when you said dialing down this time, you're also contributing greatly to content creation. How was the feedback from the content creators, and maybe also from the number of subscriptions or people buying? Because as a content creator in Roundnet, and I know it very well myself, you don't make so much money, if any, really, right? So
Yep.
how do you tackle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's been something that we, between me and my co-founder, have been, for since we kind of founded the app, was something that, like, obviously, like, if the Roundnet creators were making a bunch of money, then it'd be a really easy sell to them, right? It'd be like, let's speed up your process. You'll make, spend more time doing other stuff. And obviously right now, almost everything that everyone contributes to the Roundnet community is done just out of their own, goodwill. And it is hard to do that, especially with such a young demographic of people too, whether they're people that are in college or just recently out of college. People don't necessarily have all the disposable income or whatever that they would want to spend on, some app like this. So it was definitely something a challenge that we had to come over. And kind of like, what we kind of realized is just delivering a good app experience for people was going to be more beneficial than almost any other feature we could have provided. And so it was really like, for the first, like, I think 6 months or so of our entire time after we launched the app, we didn't have a single paid subscriber. Like, we didn't have anyone besides I bought it, but that's besides me, there was no other paid subscriber on the app. And I think our first one came in October or November of 2023. So like, a pretty long ways after we had launched, or I think roughly 6 months or so after we had launched. And I just remember I was in the same room as my co-founder when it happened, and both of us were just so ecstatic. It was like this is the best feeling to make $5 ever. It was like one of those things that it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like we're this excited over getting $5 from someone. But it was like one of those things that, like, after that it was like, okay, then the next week there was like one other person that subscribed, and so it slowly started building and building and building. And so it's definitely very satisfying, at least from a developer's perspective and from a founder and business perspective, to now be like, okay, now we're sitting at the point where we're like basically break even for everything that we do. Obviously, like, neither I or my co-founder are getting paid at all, or anything like that, but at least the costs to run the business are basically about break even for where everything that is coming in. So it's been a great journey, and obviously, like, every time someone subscribes, I rush to send an email out to them thanking them and everything like that. So yeah, so I'm trying my best to keep it for a good experience for everyone.
I cannot stop smiling because I've gone through almost the same experience this May, once we launched the Roundnet Coaching App, and then had the subscription model, and then I sent out emails, especially rewarding the people who have been following us for some time, going to events. It's like, okay, guys, we're giving you 50% discounts once in a lifetime opportunity, because we are so happy for you to be part of this journey and giving your feedback, because we did a lot of feedback forums before. What do you guys want? And I know there are a lot of things that we can do better in the app in terms of coaching. It's just been put, unfortunately, on a sidetrack right now because of personal reasons. I also had to get my life in order in a way that usually comes or should come at the first place. And I remember I was working in Albania at that time, and my parents came to visit, and I just launched the email campaign, and I would get a message like, somebody bought it. I was like, this is so cool. And then we would go outside, I think, for food, and I would return, I would check the email, and I got, okay, 2 more people purchased the program. And I just told my dad, like, look, I just made like a couple of tens of euros while
Yeah.
we were having fun at the beach. And this was the moment for me, like, okay, this digital marketing or this digital thing is real, because my parents are old school, right? Like it's not a real job or anything, but it is. I've had here Kyle follow recently, who crushed it in my place. He and his friend Justin visiting Europe, and he also developed an app with baseball trading cards. He's a iOS developer, and he also told me, we had the same conversation. I was like, it is so cool when people start buying, but it's a long time where no one buys and just cannot. It's just frustrating in a way, right? But then once it happens, I was also ecstatic. Like, how do you pronounce this? Ecstatic.
Ecstatic. Yeah.
I was excited. Let's put it that way. Let's not make my life more difficult than it needs to be. I was really excited, really excited. But okay, let's go and let's push forward. But I found that in my case, there was a lack of team because I was second from the team. I was Albania. We're not really meeting on a daily basis. Whereas if you could celebrate with your team and then, okay, this is going forward. So my question is, how do you actually then finance? So now you're at the stage when you break even with the Roundnet AI, you have interns, you have co-founder, but the initial investments or even like getting the interns, did you pay it yourself? Did you go and...
Yeah, basically, it's all been financed between me and my co-founder. So I think basically in total, roughly to get basically where we are today, I think we've spent a couple $1,000s, I want to say, in total. So call it 2 or 3,000, I think, in total, between everything, between getting a business license, all of the back end development costs. You have to be there's just a bunch of random costs obviously associated with businesses, and so I think all in all it's been a couple thousand that we've put in, which is just, we're fortunate in a position where both of us work outside of this, so we have the ability to help finance it, and luckily now it's break even. So maybe one day we'll get paid back that couple thousand, I don't know, but it's, yes, it was all personally financed between the two of us.
So what is driving you? Because it's not money. Like in Roundnet, it's a lot of passion. And I can sense also the personal challenges that you had as a developer. Okay, this is this very big mountain I want to climb. Can I make it? Can I do it? And once you climb the summit, then you're like, okay, where is the next one? Because I feel that's maybe your modus operandi, like how you function in this world.
Yeah, totally. I think probably a lot of the motivation, like originally it started out as like, it's going to be worth it. Like, I think everyone kind of has the drive of like, if you're like, I like playing video games as much as the next person or whatever, but like if I'm not like, if I do that for too long, I might like get the feeling like, oh, I should probably be doing something, that will either help my career or help my whatever, so I get that nagging feeling occasionally. And the motivation first came with like, if I was working on Roundnet AI basically in the early years, it was kind of just like, oh, well, in the best case scenario, it turns into a full-time job and I can do this full-time. In a worst case scenario, it's something that looks really good on a resume because it's the same type of stuff that I really like to work on. I eventually want to become a computer vision engineer, so I'm doing kind of similar problems at larger companies and stuff, or this company or whatever. That's kind of where I want to be in the future. But I figured, the worst case scenario, it just looks good on a resume, and like that was kind of the baseline. And so that's kind of where I was able to basically work on it for a year and a half, because I was like, oh, it'll just, if it goes somewhere, great. If it doesn't, it'll still look good. And obviously now it's gotten to the point where it's, it's, to that point where that still to some extent is still some of the same motivation. It can't get worse than it, already is, or, it's already been a great example project to work on and stuff to have the time to do. So, obviously the best case scenario still would could turn into a full-time position, but it's nowhere near that yet. But yeah, that's where the motivation comes from.
And do you sometimes ask yourself or wonder if you're too early, or if your team is too early for the
Yeah, that's a little bit, but I'm okay with that. I think I do get a lot of questions from people when I tell them, people that don't play Roundnet, they ask like, "Oh, why don't you do this for like a bigger sport?" And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess I probably could, but like for me, like the only sports that I'm really familiar with are like soccer or football, water polo, and Roundnet. And so like, you know, if I were to try and break into one of those other sports, people say like do pickleball or something, or golf or whatever it is. And for me, it's like, well, that's just my passion is here. And so, maybe if I get to the point where I like have run out of ideas for Roundnet or something, which I always have new ideas, so I don't really see that happening. But not to say that it couldn't go somewhere in the future, but yeah, it's just Roundnet's kind of one of my passions, and it's fun to work on. So yeah.
I understand completely because I've been asked the question, the same question as well, where to spend so much time and money on other things on something that doesn't even need to take off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I spent the last year a little bit more distance from Roundnet since I returned from pro playing, so to say. And I really got a perspective that how small it is.
Right.
That once you're in the bubble, you perceive it as huge, like bigger than life. But then if you look at the numbers or really with a pinch of salt, you're like, actually, it's very, very small, right?
Right.
I believe it's going to grow, and
Yeah.
I'm doing everything I can. That's why I was part of the European Roundnet Association board and
Right.
leading a couple of initiatives with establishing a tour series or ranking system and stuff like that. Because if we grow the pie, everyone collectively, creators, not only content creators, but creators like you, like Logan with the stats, we're going to open so many more opportunities because people are so passionate about the sport, but they just don't know where to use their passion, right? And they have so many different skills. I'm fascinated, like everything what you're saying, because I'm learning new things. But also, what about your interns? Are they part of the Roundnet community, or do they look more also, okay, it's going to look good on the resume, or how is it?
Yeah. Our intern specifically, the marketing one, he ran his high school Spikeball club. So that's, I think, the extent that he is familiar. Better than nothing. So that he actually has been really good to have that knowledge. And then the other one that's kind of more focused on the computer science stuff. He's maybe played a game or two, but hasn't really, so his exposure is only really through everything that we're doing here. So more limited, but that's fine. It's still we still make it work.
Absolutely. I actually believe that is the future, the way to go, because we do have people who are very passionate, but they're lacking the skills or the skill set of when it comes to leading a club, federation, or even a training session, right? I mean, I just love it when they're passionate, but at some point we also need to attract people like yourself who are passionate, but also very good at what they do. And we need great marketing people, we need great sales people. And if we somehow, I talked to Fred Eskens from the International Roundnet Federation, who's been there now serving his second term, preparing Worlds. And we need to somehow try to attract those as well, because passion is beautiful, but first of all, it doesn't pay. And second of all, it doesn't get you that far if you don't know what you're doing. It's going to get you somewhere eventually if you have a vision, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I'm also asking about the interns, because I'm trying to a balance. Because when I said 4 years ago, I believe in our club that we just found we need interns, they're like, what? I mean, we just started a club. So I was like, so what? Wait, someone's going to work here and it's going to look good on their resume. But who's not going to work for free? I was like, yeah, an intern. That's the whole point. They're going to get the experience. So, and again, in different associations, like, oh, we just need to start doing and attracting people who have maybe some affiliation, but once we start attracting those who don't, right? And it's not the money is not the factor, then we hit the gold mine. I think that is what needs to be done. Is there go for it, sorry.
I'll make one comment on that real quick, because I know
Please.
last year, or I kind of been doing this every year, where I'll like have like an end of year report that I just kind of make for myself and my co-founder and stuff, just to have like keep track of goals for the next year and all that type of stuff. But one of those things that I keep track of there is like the growth of the Roundnet community. I take like the websites that people use to host tournaments, so whether that's like Fuengo or Click and Run, or I know like Player Zone for Germany. They are the kind of the three major ones that at least people talk about. And I go through and I get all the data off of those websites, and I have aggregated them to basically just like, okay, how what's the trajectory of Roundnet's growth over the years and stuff. And it's been interesting to see, like, obviously COVID, I think, had a huge run up just because, it was one of the only things people could do at the time. And I think last year or the year before it was down slightly, but I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like this year.
Do you have the data somewhere? Because I'd be so interested.
I do have the data. Yeah, so as a developer, one of my things that I like to do is web scraping, and so I've
Okay.
gone through and scraped all of the data off of those websites to actually have it in a CSV format. So I do have access to that data.
Do you think you can look for it now? If it's not too much hassle?
Yes,
We'll
I
just
don't think it's I don't think it's going to be up to date to today's numbers, but it would be update. It would be to the last time I ran it numbers. Yeah, I can pull it up. Give me 1 second here.
We have the data now in front of us. Okay, this is exciting. Let's go, Austin.
Yeah, so this is some data that I was able to pull off of the tournament hosting websites, and again, this is only updated from end of 2023, so it doesn't include anything from 2024. And obviously, the other caveat here is some of these sites weren't as weren't as used until more recently, so maybe take some of the earlier years as a grain of salt. But the one that you can kind of take in here is obviously the growth between year to year. Really, if you're looking at just the three here, you have a 40% growth from 2021 to 2022, 15% growth from 2022 to 2023. And I'll be able to run these numbers, in a later point to kind of see what this is like this year and how that compares and what the growth is like this year. But I don't know. This is just something I find interesting and like to do just because, data is fascinating to me. So, yeah.
What are the actual numbers? Because I cannot really see. If we could zoom in, maybe.
Yeah. Here we go. So this is this one. I think this graph might be only doing Fuego, and it's not. This might not be including click and run and player zone.
Okay.
The total number of competitors on Fuego for 2023 was roughly 25,000. And again, I don't think this is unique players. So this is, I think, just total number of registrations across all of the tournaments in 2023. But nonetheless, there's some data here about different things. Total number of competitors by month.
That means, for example, if I understand correctly, on Fuego in those 2023, if someone like my friend Nelson played 40 tournaments or Aurora in a year, then they would be there not once but 40 times if
That's
they
correct.
were all on Fuego. Okay,
yeah.
understand.
And I have the data also that distinctly takes the count of people, regardless of how many tournaments they registered for, but it's just not easily reflected in here.
But this is genius, Austin, because what we could do as a round community, or if someone in Power IRF, Jura, is that, for example, I can send an email to Roundnet Germany, hey guys, could you share your data? Because they have also all the data about all the players. And then I know the founder of Click and Run as well. Like, let's do the same. Because then we can really get an image or better understanding how big or how small the competitive scene is, right? Can really track them and see from year to year, okay, we grew by 15% because, or 20% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which is another very important part if you want to pitch to investors or sponsors. So this is absolutely amazing. I think something that we need to be doing more, the leaders of Roundnet, like USA Roundnet. Do you have the number of tournaments there as well? Could you maybe show us as well? Maybe from Fuego alone?
I have a number of tournaments. Let me see if I
think I saw it there, but with the corner of my eye.
Yes, I do. Okay, let me reach.
Oh, this is exciting. I love it. We're learning so many new things.
Let's see. So here's the total number of tournaments over time. Again, this might be just the Fuego data. But obviously you can see the summer peaks there and stuff. But one thing that I found interesting when I was looking at this data, if I remember correctly, was the click and run data had the same number of tournaments on a year-to-year basis, but the number of people at those tournaments were increasing. But then for Fuego, the number of people stayed the same, but the amount of tournaments increased. So it's kind of like a reverse growth there, which I thought was kind of interesting when I was first looking at that data also. Again, that might be different since this has been pulled in 2023, but that was just also one interesting thing that I think I came out of this with.
That is indeed interesting, because I've been thinking, I just applied to run for the EURA board, so European Roundnet Association.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to be done for the growth of the sport was something that we really do need. And one of the things when I talk to multiple people like yourself who understand the community, understand their stuff, is that we would need one system on one ranking, not like ranking for the entire world, like in tennis, I mean, ideally, of course, but really have one data set so we can actually see, okay, what happened, how many tournaments, how many players are attending, what divisions, and then all these things. Do you think that would be also very beneficial, let's say for run it in Europe or the US alone, that it's not Fuego, but it's a different one where we combine click and run, player zone, and all the tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably also just some like regional differences in terms of how people like to set stuff up, right, and interact with different tournament sites, and so it might be different kind of based on geography, I might suspect too. So like maybe, I think the US favors Fuego, and then I know Europe, I think, favors click and run more often than not. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact data. So right now, click and run serves Spain and France mostly. Zone now expanding to Switzerland, and Germany is by far, I think they have over 7,000 or 8,000 people on the player zone last time I checked. So really a lot. So who are registered and play the tournament at some point or participate in the German Round League. And then Fuego came to Europe because of Spikeball, because Fuego is owned by Spikeball. And in Europe, we have this movement where we don't really want to be dependent on Spikeball that much. We want to give chances to Premier, Spike, Bamball, Rashball, and other manufacturers as well. So we used, as EURA, as a European Roundnet Association, we used Fuego because we work closely with Spikeball. I think this is the case this year as well. But our sanctioned events, for example, in 2023, were not always on Fuego. They could have been in the player zone, could have been in the click and run. So even as we didn't know, okay, how many players do we have, we did then do the EURA membership that you had to purchase on Fuego, right? So then we would get at least an idea of players participating in those events. So we'd have exact numbers. So this is something that I said that we definitely must do, because we need to have the data so we can see and mark the improvements, and the board accepted it, which was great. It's also a source of revenue for us, or income, as the European Roundnet Association. But interesting fact that sometimes more people, same amount of tournaments, than the other way around, because the tournaments are getting bigger, some of them, but some of them are also getting smaller, or they're getting canceled. And I don't know how the development is going to go, because if it's the future to have 300 teams in a tournament or not, but it's probably better a question on tournament directors or other people who are in that regard. But from the data perspective, where some of the conclusions that you came after your yearly report, and maybe like personally, I'm very interested how the review looks and how do you structure it, because I'm a big self-development, self-help book guy, because I use something from Tim Ferriss, from Tony Robbins, and then I adjust it to go according to my needs. So maybe how does it look, the yearly review process for you for Roundnet AI?
Yeah. The yearly review process is one that, it's kind of just like a reevaluation. Like I think setting goals is something that's really important, just, to keep yourself accountable and kind of to know where you're, shooting for. Because I think a lot of life is just like projecting, like, I think this is where this is going to go, and then trying to pick a line somewhere in there, and then kind of figuring it out as you go. And so goals are just one way to kind of help you do all that. And so I kind of reevaluate goals, kind of, and then I go through like the lessons and the learnings, like what went really well throughout the year, what went really poorly throughout the year, and at least just having the time to write that down, so that at the very least I can come back to it, or not forget it. And then I go through just, obviously some of the more business side of stuff with like, how many users do we have? How many paid users do we have? What's our profit and loss, or what's our revenue and expenses and stuff like that, and what's all that type of stuff. And then just kind of also the market condition report is what I call it, of just like, what is the general growth of Spike or Roundnet projected? Will it grow 15% again like it did last year? Will it only grow 7%? Will it be kind of more declining in that, in that way, or will it be, maybe it'll jump up to 30 or 40 again this year? I'm not sure. Yeah, I just kind of break it down in terms of everything that I think would be relevant to that whole year, is just stuff that I put into that document.
What were some of the key learnings? And as most people know, we learn most from failures. Or one of my role models, Tim Ferriss, says, "What is your favorite failure?" At the time, it seemed really bad, but it turned out to be quite well. Do you have something like that?
Yeah. Let me see here. I've got a couple. Oh yeah, I wrote down 4 from last year's. So I think one thing we learned for us specifically for Roundnet AI is we tried sponsoring tournaments, we tried sponsoring teams. We like last year we sponsored more tournaments, and I don't think we sponsored any teams last year. And kind of what we realized is like, between the travel it takes to get there, and we had to, like, we bought a whole banner and stuff that we can go set up at tournaments and everything now. It's just like, what we kind of learned from one of those was like, okay, we maybe like we didn't, I don't even think we converted like one person, and in that whole process of like, the 40 or 80 people that are maybe there, like their main, what we kind of learned is like, they're just there to play play Roundnet, or right. So like they don't want to be pitched to, they don't want to, like, maybe they already know about it or whatever. So that was like one learning that I think was, or one failure for us. It was like, maybe let's deprioritize that. One of the other ones maybe is like, for a lot of our beta members that we had back last year, we didn't get any of those people converted into paying users into the platform once it first launched. And so that was also kind of like a failure on my part, because I felt like oh, they were the ones that were most motivated for it to succeed. Like, what did I do wrong to have them not want to continue or something? And those are a couple, but I do think with more recently, with like, I'll bring one success just to bring it back around, but like more recently with our player sponsorships and team sponsorships this year, that's been something that has been really beneficial for both the growth of our company and just kind of getting our brand image out there and everything. And so yeah, it's been fun to like work with like In System and Rogue and a couple other teams to get everything sorted out. So yeah,
I'll help you out. Being around at Nerds in Disguise.
yeah, there you go.
Which is so great again in so many ways. But for example, I know the guys, Stefan, they very well. They now got second at the ETS, which is their first great result, which I'm very happy for them. But till then, they were not really known as an elite team or quarterfinals teams. It was always rather round of 16 kind of team. And then they get a sponsorship from you guys. And it also shows the other teams who may perform better, but who didn't do the job. They didn't reach out to companies. They didn't think what they can value, that I don't have to be the best to get sponsorship. So maybe what are these guys doing what we are not doing, as if it was my team? So I believe that also sets a great example. And how does the sponsorships work? So let's say I have a team here that would like to get sponsored. Do they just reach out to you, send you an email and write, maybe, I don't know, their successes? Or do they do a video application? So you look at the content creation. So how does this process work?
Yeah, right now we've kind of filled our spots for this year in terms of all of the teams that we sponsored, and obviously we're kind of like part of the way through this season kind of anyway. But I think but I'll kind of go through that process of what we did this year and maybe how it'll change for next year and stuff. This year it was kind of just like, we had a couple people reach out to us individually before we even mentioned it to our followers on Instagram and stuff, and so we obviously gave them the priority. But we eventually just set out a post. We said, hey, if anyone wants to be sponsored, like come give us a message and we'll try and get that working. And so it was kind of almost an open invite for anyone to get a sponsorship. There was some criteria around like followers on social media, and there was some commitments that we wanted them to uphold, like putting like one post together and like having it in the bio and stuff, and some smaller commitments there. But for this first year, it was really just like, okay, let's throw it out there and see if it works. If it works this year, great. Then maybe we'll be more selective next year, or maybe we'll get a lot more people wanting to do it next year. I don't know. But it's one of those things where let's just first start, see if it's anything that's worth continuing, and if it is, then we can go from there.
Are you also working? First of all, I think that's, as I said, really great. And at some point, you need to just start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you get our feedback. Do you regularly get feedback from your users and also from the sponsors teams? Like, what can you improve? What do they like? Because you can see I have an app in Play Store and also in App Store that you see the impressions, the number of times it crashed. But do you ask specifically the users as well? And if so, what do you ask and how often? Like, what could you improve? How was the experience?
Yeah. So we've got pretty good metrics into some of the internals of the app. So like with the app, as you said, like if the app crashes or if some of the analysis doesn't work as intended or something like that, like some of those technical stuff is stuff that we kind of already see on the back end. So we can change those without even needing to interact with anyone. Obviously, sometimes if it's like a really egregious error or something that goes on, we'll send out an email and be like, hey, sorry, we saw this happen. We're sorry. And we'll be better and fix it up. But it is a matter of, I think, just reaching out to our sponsored teams. Like I know there's been some people that we work with that give us a bunch of like Nicole Roundnet, I'll give a shout out to.
Yeah.
She has been really good at making sure that all of the features that she wants are and everyone else would want are there. And we've tried to give a lot of the power of what features we provide to our pro members. So basically, every time I send out like a thank you email to someone who becomes a paid subscriber, in that email I basically say like, hey, here's like a list of features that like previous pro subscribers like wanted added, and we added them. So it was like, so we basically say like, if you want anything, like please just email us and we'll add it to the app, or we'll work on getting it assigned the correct priority and everything like that. Because we at the end of the day, like, it's our app, but it's also the Roundnet community's app, right? It's something that is bigger than just me and my co-founder. We want it to be something that's used by the whole community, and so that's just, we need to build it in whatever way that they want to use it. And so, yeah. So that's probably my conclusion on that point.
That is a great answer, and I'm taking notes, mental one, and luckily this is a recording, so I can return to this. And I know this is vital, but I haven't been doing it that well with the coaching app, because I noticed that I became, for example, a little bit of a perfectionist. That I'm the 80% guy. Okay, it's good enough. Okay, let's go and let's roll and adapt. But then I went to becoming perfectionist and really not getting it done. And then at some point I said, okay, freak me, let's return to my old self, just get it out there and see what happens. But then again, I didn't do a lot of the follow-ups, which I know needs to happen exactly as you said, because the same with the coaching app, it is there for people. It's not for me. I don't play anymore, right? I don't care. I don't have to win tournaments. I'll win once I organize over 30 tournaments, then maybe I'll get competitive again. So this is more fun. But do you also approach your marketing department? Do you approach club leaders or college clubs and give them what a lot of apps, or let's say businesses do, that they offer special pricing or special packages for companies, or they have enterprise, right, is usually called the pricing. Do you do that as well? Because the club scene is different in the US. As I understand, it's mostly focused around college clubs, whereas in Europe we have the sports clubs, that sometimes there are multiple sports in one club or not. But have you been working with people like this, or do you have any strategy in that?
Yeah, we've definitely had that thought to try and have like either like a discount for a club, like a college club or something. The one kind of bottleneck that we keep running into is like the app isn't designed to have like multiple accounts on it. So like if you log into the app on one phone and then log into the app on another phone, like the videos won't be shared between the two, because just the way we have it set up, it's, we wanted to prioritize like high quality exports and everything for everyone. So that means keeping all the videos local on the phone.
That means, sorry to interrupt you, that means if I have a phone, I create an account and it's on my phone and I have all the videos there. And then if my friend or my teammate wanted to log in from his phone, he's obviously not going to see the videos, because even if he logged into my or our account, if we have a team account, right? Do I understand it correctly?
Yeah.
So you would have to have separate accounts for, let's say, if I'm a coach and I have 10 players, and then each of those 10 players will have to have their individual accounts, right? With their individual footage that is on their phones.
Yeah. So at that point, it's kind of just like having giving like 10 separate, accounts away and stuff. And, we would like, I think there's a way that we could probably do it. So it's definitely not out of the woods yet in terms of, or, definitely not out of the realm of possibility, but it's just, it's not the highest priority thing that we're working on right now.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's just one of those things that'll get done eventually.
If I may contribute with my opinion and expertise, I don't actually think it is that important, because if I'm imagining, okay, it's me and my teammate, we really don't care, maybe it sounds bad, about the clips of the other team,
Yeah.
right? And if the coach is doing it, then he has his games, or the games that he wants to analyze specifically, that may not necessarily be the games now the teams want to analyze for their content creation or anything, right? But I see that we could build this into an ecosystem for content creators or for players, to make it very easy for them to upload their videos onto YouTube or whatever, to get the clips, then add some cool effects with CapCut. I mean, you'll have more apps, but there would be a progression domain. So it's easier for us to centralize the footage, and the more footage we put out there, high quality footage, obviously, either if it's on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, then the entire sport can grow. Because when you said your yearly market report, I don't know if you've done this, but because there's definitely a lot of work, really amazing to see how many views did actually Spikeball related videos, around related videos, get across social media channels, and if that is growing or not. Because there are clips from Preston from 4 years ago, they're still getting millions of views. So Preston, Jared didn't get anything for that, or Caleb in that case, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad. Spikeball put my videos on their TikTok, got 10 million views. I didn't see a cent. Also not ideal, right? Without any credit whatsoever.
Right.
They apologized. Yeah, 10 million.
Yeah. No, I've, as kind of like an internal, just as a way to kind of keep track, I have like a general sense of, one thing I have been following is just like, how many followers does the Spikeball account have? Just because I figured like it might be a good rough estimate, for how the social media presence is growing or not growing, for Roundnet. So that's kind of one, I guess, like pseudo metric that I've been using. But it's not like the most, I definitely think like if I was able to track the views on specific videos or content around Roundnet, I think that'd be a much better metric. But that would require a lot of web scraping to go through and do.
Yeah, and a lot of manpower, woman power. Right now, Spikeball has 548,000 followers. But actually, it hasn't really grown that much in the past, I would say, 4 years. I don't know if it also aligns with your.
That's the same thing. Yeah,
data.
that's the same thing I noticed
plus
also.
minus 30,000 maybe.
Yep.
And I remember listening to the Roundnet podcast as well, when Scott talked to Chris Reuter, that they were discussing the content they are posting, that they get better or more views when they post like not random content, but family content, right? Not the pro ones. I mean, also, if I just scroll down right now, it is exactly, it's 1, 2, 3, 6. It's 6 videos, family content, 1 pro. 1, 2, 3, and again pro, which makes sense because most people that buy sets are not pro players. It's again super small percentage. So we are actually trying, either me with the coaching or with the Roundnet AI, try to get a share of the market that is tiny. It's infinite small, so to say, right?
Yeah, that podcast that Chris did with Scott was really interesting when I listened to it. I was trying to figure out myself if I agreed more with Scott on, if you start at the top and it trickles down, or if you get more people in the pro level and support the pro people more, then that'll expand the base, or if I kind of agreed more with Chris on, getting a wider base and that'll funnel up to the top. I was trying to, figure out in my head which one I kind of agreed more with. And I think, in my own thoughts, maybe I think I actually might agree more with Chris than with Scott on some of that, but maybe that's just my opinion. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion or not, but yeah, I'll put that out there, I guess. No hard feelings, Scott.
That means Chris' approach or Spikeball Inc. approach is to go more for the broad audience, the moms, the kids playing college clubs, or people who play occasionally. And Scott was, okay, make the elite level really visible and then go from top down. Yes, I understand. It was definitely a very good episode. Scott did a good job there. It was kind of an investigative one with the Brookline saga.
Right.
Actually, a podcast episode has already come out by the time you guys are listening, with Tom Schroys from Brookline, who also shares his story. We talked about development of Roundnet because he worked for elite soccer clubs in Europe, for Soccer Club, and also ESPN. So a lot of things that he contributed also to the growth as a Brookline sports director. And that is definitely the big question, right? Like, how do you grow the sport? I found everyone saying we want to grow the sport, but they don't have any goals. They just want to grow. And that's why it's so refreshing to talk with you. So I know we need to have goals. These are the numbers. This is the data. And there we go. We want to have 10,000 players who played in tournaments worldwide, as an example. We have it in Fuego, click and rank player zone. Okay, let's all those three work together once in a half year, share those numbers, and see, not to flex the muscles, but really to see what we can do better. And then, you can also see, which user is using more of the platform. Probably could be beneficial to all three of them. Who knows? But
and I would think probably Chris and his team at Spikeball is probably doing some of that internally. I would think, goal setting in terms of growth and stuff like that. Course. So I'm sure they're doing that. But yeah, one kind of funny, this kind of goes back to the kind of origins of Roundnet AI a little bit, but
please.
When I was after I had first made the drone tracking version for the app, I actually sent a LinkedIn message to Chris, and I said, hey, check out this project that I started. I think this is really cool. I think you should. I basically asked him for an internship. I was like, hey, I think you should consider having me on as a summer intern or something to help develop this full time. So in a different universe, like Roundnet AI could have been owned by Spikeball, and things would have been a lot different. But that's another kind of funny side story to all this.
Maybe it was good for you because now you build it, now it's gonna grow, and then they're gonna come knocking once you have huge user base, and then you're gonna cash in. And that would be an amazing story, right? I mean, you'll never know, and of course, Spikeball has to have goal setting. Otherwise, they wouldn't have turned out to be $1 million company and making multiple million of dollars if they didn't. So Chris obviously knows what he's doing, or the entire Spikeball team. That a lot of people don't appreciate it. So also when I wrote the articles as Brookline Spikeball, because I talk about this with Ben Dantowitz, also on the podcast, that we have the sense of entitlement as players. Okay, I'm a pro player. I'm a Spikeball premier. I'm like, okay, so what? What do you do? Are you generating thousands or millions of euros in revenue for companies, for other people, making people jobs? Not really, right? I mean, it may sound harsh, but what is there more that you can do to grow the sport? But I understand also you're a player is when you went to the tournament, and so, everyone just wants to play. I struggle with this personally a lot because I want to play every tournament, but I also wanted to grow the sport, and I wanted people to take action. So, and as example would be, guys, please wear matching jerseys when I was not a tournament director, because it simply looks bad, or you have to wear a jersey in the finals. It has to be a rule, because if I just turn on stream on Twitch or wherever, and I see some guys playing without a t-shirt, no matching jerseys, I was like, okay, this is not a sport. So I think this is a fun league.
Yeah, well, one thing that I kind of think too is there's kind of, it feels like some maybe misaligned incentives a little bit too, because like from a pro player's perspective, as a pro player, your goal is to get better, right? And so what you need to do to get better is you need to train a lot of hours by yourself in the basement or whatever to train your serve. You need to be playing with really top level people, and you need to be doing that frequently. And so you're basically, all of your time is spent with people that are already in the sport, and there's not a lot of time that's actually spent on the actual growth of, like, inviting new people to come play pickup or do a lot of that type of stuff. And so maybe that's kind of where my mindset of, like, I think growing it really from the bottom up is gonna be, the way that the sport grows, because I think as pro players, it's the incentives are just kind of not aligned as much as they probably could be or should be, um, in my opinion, I guess. But yeah.
It varies individually, of course, as always. So we are just now making it sound easier or generalizing.
Sure.
I couldn't agree more. The thing is, if you're a pro player of any sport, if you want to do something on a high level, you care about the details. How can you improve that serve? How can I win this 1 point more? I know I had a season where I would lose, I think, 5 or 6 series in the bracket by 1 point or in the extras. And I was like, okay, why is that? And for me personally, I always had, or very often, different team partner. So when we played against established teams, that is exactly as 1 or 2 points. When you're a team, you're gonna get those 50% balls. If you're not, if your chemistry is simply not developed because you haven't played together, then you probably are more likely to lose that point. And that's what broke my back many times, right? On the other hand, if you're complaining that you're not getting enough money or that sport is small, then you also need to take some action. And as you said, invite new players to pick up and maybe play 2 hours of competitive pickup, but play half an hour with people who are not as good. Give them tips if they ask. And I could have an own episode that I could just be talking myself about the things I did in Munich, how we grew from 20 people to 1,200 in WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have 300 people in my phone with surname Spike. That was before I could add someone with the QR code or invitation link.
Right.
But I would literally just go every day after work, would drive through 2-3 parks, would talk to people, approach them, ask them their names. I would maybe play along a little bit, ask them if they knew we had a WhatsApp group. That was before we had a club. And I would just add them there. And I didn't have to do it. It didn't help my serves. It didn't help my game. But I knew if I want this pie to grow, then I need to be the one who's doing it because no one else is going to be doing it. And hopefully I can motivate more people. And I was very fortunate to do so in Munich, to also go and join and organize different type of events and be there regularly so we can go and play. Again, it's easier in Europe, right? Because everything is just much tighter and more people living in there. So there are definitely geographic or culture differences for sure. I fully understand it. What are some of the next steps that Roundnet AI is going to take? Now, we mentioned serving. Hopefully, after people listen to this, all people are going to subscribe or at least give it a free trial. A go. So, guys, even if you never use it, just subscribe and pay. That's also okay. That's also going to do your job. You don't have to spend a lot of hours doing it. But just, it's going to go to a great cause. So we can grow the sport if you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah. In terms of, where we're taking this in next steps, obviously I've talked a little bit about the serving feature, and that's, I think, probably our next biggest thing. That's where I would love to see priority going. But I do think there's also a large market, I guess, or there's a lot of uses, I think, for helping tournament directors specifically. And I think, streams and Roundnet streams in general are something that, it's really easy to just like throw your phone up on a tripod, hit record, and have it live streamed up somewhere. But if you have bad audio, if you have, if you don't have a scoreboard or something like that, then the viewing experience can be pretty difficult. And so I think there's probably some spot in that space where Roundnet AI could help with either, I don't want to say this because it's I don't know if it's possible yet, but automatic scoring, or being able to maybe take some of that serving features of being like, oh, this, like in base, like think of baseball, for example, like when a pitch happens, you know exactly where that pitch hit in the batter's box, for example. Could we take that and have that be real time for viewers that are watching the stream, so that as soon as a serve happens, you see exactly where on the serve that occurred? So I think there's a lot of stats and analytics around the streaming environment and the viewer experience that I think is probably maybe where we might try and go after we get the serving feature done. But I will say, if anyone out there listening has an idea for where you want Roundnet AI to go, I'm all ears. It's if you just look up the Roundnet AI Instagram account and DM us or something, I'll more than happily respond and take some advice for where we go next steps. But yeah, what are your thoughts on some of that tournament director or viewing experience kind of support for that?
You have already answered my next question. I mean, the questions number 2 or 3, where can people find you and reach out to you, as we are slowly coming to an end of this amazing interview. Yes, I think you said it. I talked to a lot of people about content, elite players. Of course, in Mallorca, I have this unique opportunity to talk to not only best European players, but Americans, when Clark Marshall, Buddy M, Fred Inkel, Max Model, they were all there this year, is the scoreboard. I can imagine that it is very difficult, but I just want to bounce an idea of you that came to me. Would it be easier if, because for example, when I was recording my videos, I would put the mic underneath the net. So wireless Rode 2. If I send you, as an example, to go specific, I'll send you a game or upload it to the app, and you will have the audio. So from just saying the score, so okay, 3-2 service. Yes. Could you be able just to take the audio from the video and just have it analyzed by AI? Okay, just take the numbers. I mean, sometimes you have a redo, but I think you can teach that, and then just put it in. Because that may be much easier from the back end perspective if there was an audio. Of course, not everyone's filming with microphones, but as a start.
Right. From a pure technological perspective, it depends on the audio. I'd have to hear a sample, I think, because I think, if it's really windy, obviously, like, it's going to be harder to hear the voices and everything. But if assuming you're able to hear the voices clearly, and the only hurdle that I'm really thinking in my head is how you assign the correct points per the team, because obviously if all 4 people are saying their points first, or maybe on accident someone says the other team's point first, before, then you either have to like match the voices together and match the teams to the voices. That mapping is probably where that gets complicated, but all to say that, like, it's not impossible. So it'd be an interesting problem to work on, but I definitely think it could be possible.
I'll send you a sample because I've been recording games for years. The thing is that there needs to be then clearly assigned, that's from the tournament director perspective, who is the home team and away team. Right. So maybe even who starts serving is already done beforehand according to the seeding, because then, team A will start serving in 0-0. It can be, okay, team A has 0 points. And then according to the rules, you always need to say the score of your team first. So it can be 4-6 first, right?
Yeah.
And if people mess up, okay, then do mess up. They should not. I mean, that's one of the few things you're responsible as a player, to announce the score properly. And I think that's the least we can ask our players to do on the highest level.
Yeah.
Right? True. Because we can just start with a smaller sample. So you would literally you would have the video, you would have the audio saying the numbers, which just go till 21 or 25 or 30 in very rare cases, and then just match it. Because it can also first start changing after I announce the score, right? So let's say we are in 3-5 and I'm serving and we're going to lose the point. So it says 3-5. So now it's 3-5 there. We're going to lose the point, and it's going to take a while. In ideal world, it would be after the ball is dead. But then the next team is serving 6-3. Then it switches.
Right.
Because even if this just is 1 point later, or like a little bit, would still be much better, because I know how time consuming it is to use the own scoreboard in iMovies. We had people trying to do different stuff. That alone, that experience, when you just look at the random game on YouTube, would make so much difference. Because I also don't watch from 0 to like 10. Then I'll go and watch the crunch time. If there's not a crunch time, I'll go a little bit back and I say, okay, where did the game break? And then you go. But with scoreboard, without a scoreboard, it's not possible. Then I would listen if I knew that someone recorded sound, then I would try to listen. But again, it takes much more. Whereas pop, 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 which we could increase the.
No, send me a sample. I'd love to kind of hear it and see if that's something that's possible.
I just love to end interview when we have next steps. What are we going to do next? Austin, are you coming to London to Worlds? Will you make it?
I will not be coming this year, unfortunately. I would love to, but my budget is not going to allow me to come, unfortunately. So I will be hanging back in Seattle for it. I'll be watching as much of the streams as possible.
You can go at least on a boat tour and see orcas, something we cannot do in
exactly.
London. I'm a big marine guy. I'm scuba diving, love big animals. But then maybe the Worlds next year, or if you make it to Europe, and I say this to almost all of my American friends or not Americans, just send me a message or use our Discord channel and we'll hook you up. And we have so many references where I did entire itineraries for Buddy and Preston back in the day. And I think you would have in almost every city that plays Roundnet a free couch. Nice. And you can meet a lot of people. Because I also figured, for example, that Europeans are still not as good as Americans will say the Worlds or Canadians in Run, but we have this different culture, right? So it's more of a culture experience for you guys to come over and meet us and actually learn. You don't have to take an Uber from the airport to the city. My friend Jake from Texas doing that in his last trip last year. So now just take the public transport. What? Because he didn't have a concept from Texas that there could be a public transport from the airport. Yeah. Right. So little things like this. I think our continent is pretty cool. So you're more than welcome wherever I live, always, for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
To answer my last question that you have, Roundnet AI on Instagram. Guys, also feel free to check out the website. It's also roundnet.ai. Much better subscribe straight away, think later. Support the creators. Yeah.
And the other thing I'll add too is we've got an app for Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows. So whatever system you want to work on, you can do that. And again, you can find that all at roundnet.ai. So hope to see you on the app sometime.
Austin, thank you so much for taking the time. And I have a feeling we'll talk pretty soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jacob. This was awesome. And I'm glad I was able to talk about Roundnet AI for a couple hours. So always happy to do so.
Pleasure all, my man. Pleasure all. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Future Round Navigating Course Instagram, but especially Roundnet AI. And with that, attack it. Bye-bye.
Future Roundnet.